Hello, and welcome to the Kemetic How-To Guide for Egyptian Pagan and Kemetic practitioners. I'm your host, Sharon. First off, I want to advise all of you viewers out there, if you happen to be watching somewhere where privacy might be an issue, you don't want somebody to overhear or to be walked in on, whatever, then save this video and watch it later. Not because we're going to be discussing anything explicit, but because this is the kind of topic that strict Christians would probably scream at, because I'm going to be telling you some tips to begin Egyptian pagan, Kemetic practice, and specifically if you're having to worship undercover, i.e. if you're living at home with parents, or if you're living with somebody, or you're in a situation where you cannot let it be known to others, that you follow, a non-Christian religion. Ordinarily, respecting your elders, is a Kemetic virtue, and, I would encourage that. But, you know what? So is religious tolerance. And furthermore, that is, religious freedom is a legal right. So, let me help you exercise your right to worship as you see fit, with a few basic tips. So, you're a beginner to Egyptian paganism in one of its many forms. Where do you start? Well, you're already in a good place because you're at this channel. If you look through the videos, I've got one where I talk about the difference between Tamarin Wicca and Kemetic practice. That's a common question that a lot of people have. But some other things to consider for the immediate term. Primarily, you want to look at your environment. Are you living at home? Are you in a dorm room? Whatever. Do your parents go through your things? Do you have issues with privacy? Would books on ancient Egypt be considered contraband if they turned up, in your room? Do you have ways to hide things? These are all things that you need to think about, and you need to be realistic about. Don't think about the best case scenario. Think about the worst case, because that's going to determine a lot of what you can and cannot do. And you really don't be looking for a confrontation. That's not going to help, because if you're dealing with people who are so strict that they won't have anything of, a different religion, then don't try to reason with them, because that's not going to get very far. And again, you want to prepare for the worst case scenario. And what's funny is, when I was living with my parents, I was still a Christian, but my parents were in the middle of, when I was a teenager, they were in the middle of, a very long and protracted, spell of fighting that eventually ended up in a divorce. And in a future episode, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what was my experience, and, how did I arrive at, Egyptian religion, and Kemetic practice. But what's funny is, I was interested in ancient Egypt ever since I was, about 11 or so. And a little bit of show and tell here. My mother had actually helped me to make a headdress. This began its life. This is vintage 80s, by the way. Okay, this is an Izod shirt that ended up becoming a headdress. And, well, I'm not going to put it on all the way, but you can kind of get an idea, of what it would have looked like, But then when my parents started back and forth, they wanted to take that away, and so I had to hide it. And I ended up hiding all of my nifty little Egyptian things, more or less in plain sight. I had a wicker basket that I kept things in, but I had to, go incognito. Another thing, if you're beginning, whether you're incognito or not, read up, study, learn about ancient Egypt. If you can get physical books, great. Look through my videos. I've got a couple of recommended reading episodes where I talk about some different books and explain which ones are good for which. Get to know your local libraries. You may end up like in my case, the libraries are kind of skimpy on physical books on ancient Egypt. But maybe not. Look and you never know what's there. But especially get to know your university libraries, because they have the added advantage of keeping scholarly journals either physically on site or you can get access to them. And that's where you can find out a whole lot of stuff about Egyptian religion, translated texts, all sorts of things like that. And if, again, you have an issue with parents, disapproving of your topic of study, one thing I'm going to throw out there's a book that's Christian oriented, but it's still a neat read. It's Great People of the Bible and How They Lived. It's put out by Reader's Digest. It's got a lot of archaeological information. It's got photographs and really neat stuff. It's you can say, hey, I'm reading about biblical archaeology, and you'd be absolutely correct, but they've got a neat section on the Exodus, and they talk about, they show some Egyptian artifacts and things like that. And then when you go through and you read about the history of ancient Israel, they also show artifacts from the pagan religions that were being worshipped in Canaan at that point. And there is a Canaanite reconstructionist path. I believe they're called Natib Kaddish, and so all of those deities, that's what they're looking to. But parents don't have to know that if that's a problem. Just get the book and you can read it in plain sight. If books are not an option, either because of privacy issues or because of money, and I can certainly sympathize on that too, there are online resources that you can use, but you got to know the good ones. And I've actually been working on a best of the web for that. I divide it into two categories. You've got some academic resources that are very good, and then ones for modern practice. Academic websites, I can name off a few already. Look for osirisnet.net. Digital Egypt for Universities, which is put out by University College London, and a site called reshafim.org. That, I believe, is just an individual who's very much into Egyptian history, and they put this site together, and it's got some fantastic references. You can also learn a little bit from touregypt.net. If you go to their website, you can read historical topics. And there are a few others. Hynodology. Is it .com or .org? It's a blog. But that one is a fantastic A to Z reference on Egyptian deities. So those are some good places that you can start. As far as practice, if you are going into Kemetic religion, Tamarin Wicca, check out the Following the Sun forum for one. I have to talk up the Kemetic Reconnaissance blog. That's a great way to look at some of the different resources that are out there and link surf to some other ones. Shrine Beautiful was put out by the same person, and got some really great pictures and entries on that. And I'm going to put together some more and put those on my own website. I do have one, Temple of Tutankhamun. It needs some updating, but I try to put resources there as well. Now about beginner courses. There's one group primarily that does a beginner course that I know of. I think some other ones have put them out, or I occasionally see mention of it. If you have issues with privacy or friction with other people at home, I certainly wouldn't recommend doing that, because that's gonna end up being an issue. But even if privacy is not an issue, you can learn an awful lot of what you need to know if you follow some of the resources that I've given you, and if you go and you read. The main aim of beginner courses is to teach you about a particular system, a particular path or tradition within Kemeticism, and so on. So if you want to learn about that faith, that particular tradition, then take their beginner course. But if you just want to learn about it in general and start out, don't bother with it. Just read. So, and next, people ask about shrines. Obviously, if you are at home with somebody, that probably isn't going to be practical. There have been a couple of folks that have been on the Following the Sun forum and have posted about the issues they've had, running into a parent, screaming at them about idols and things like that. A shrine is not a necessity. It's a useful tool. It's a wonderful thing to have. You can really expand your practice with one, but you don't have to have it. What's in here is more important. If you're undercover, one thing you can do, some folks, I believe it was on Flickr, a lot of people talked about doing pocket shrines. And you get something like, this was an Altoids can, and obviously you can close it. So this one I painted with some primer, and I had every intention, and eventually I'm going to paint it to make it a little pocket shrine. And obviously what you do is you can stick your little image in here, and you can close it and hide it, when you need to. And that's why you put it someplace where nobody's going to dig into things. Another thing you can do is you can laminate your own images. I do these as bookmarks, but I've had to use one or two of these when I didn't have an icon statue. I've used laminated bookmarks before. Virtual shrines, I've seen one or two of them up. That's another possibility. Something I would like to do eventually is have some videos and maybe do some live services or something, but that's for the future. For your own personal needs, start small. And find other ways you can worship too. One thing you can do is short prayers, to the sun or to the moon. Especially sunrise. That was a very special time to the Egyptians, because remember, that's when Ra is being reborn. And other solar deities, were also associated with that. And the moon, of course, that can be the Eye of Horus, that can be Jehuti, that can be Khonsu, or it could be not so much a goddess in Kemetic practice, but in Tamarin Wicca, the moon obviously takes on a lot of properties of goddesses. So that it's nature. It's something that it's a way that the deities manifest themselves. So why not, take advantage of that? You can pour water on the ground as an offering, and say a short prayer, to Geb, who is the earth god, an offering for so-and-so. You can light just a votive candle, by itself with nothing else to identify it as anything, but you know what that is. Say a prayer. Another thing you can do is try exploring, themely foods. Learn a little bit about Middle Eastern cuisine. Go pick up a box of dried dates, or this time of year figs are coming, into season. Those are things that the ancient Egyptians ate, and they made those as offerings. Figs were a favorite of Jehuti. So that's something else that you can do. Another thing that I used to do, and unfortunately I don't have any of them anymore, but if you can find adding machine tape, it's about yay wide and it comes in a roll. You can buy it at Office Depot. If you stretch it out, hey, that's a scroll. I used to write little messages in hieroglyphics on those things and roll them up, and when you roll it and tie it, it's only yay big. You can hide it anywhere. And so you could write prayers and have them on a scroll. It's adding machine tape. That's one thing that you can do. Another thing you can do is give to charities that take care of animals that happen to be sacred. For example, if you feel an affinity for a goddess like Sekhmet, offer some money to a big cat sanctuary, or if Horus or one of the falcon deities, is very important to you, find a raptor rescue, or reptiles, so on. If there happens to be an animal that is connected to a deity you feel close to, you can take care of, its earthly servants, that way. And just, things that you can do to enjoy, all things Egyptian. What's funny is, in my case, I knew about the ancient Egyptian New Year long before I was actually a practicing Kemetic. And at that point, when I was, in junior high, high school, and, my parents disapproved of my obsession with ancient Egypt, I just waited, there were a couple of Egyptian New Years that I waited until everybody else was out of the house, because I was, it was summertime, I was, spending it at home by myself. And so I watched all 4 hours of Cleopatra in one sitting, and, ate dried dates as a snack, and I, dressed up in my Egyptian garb, and, I just changed out of it before everybody came home. Little things like that. It's not much, but, it's something that you can do. Lastly, if you're in a situation where, you've got, there's tension, there are people that disapprove of your, lifestyle or whatever, do good in school. That can afford you opportunities to get out, either through a residential school, through college. My last 2 years of high school, I actually went to a residential high school for gifted students. And I was especially motivated to go to school. It was, about an hour and a half away, and, life was tough sometimes. Had a lot of work, to do, because, it's a college workload and you're still in high school, but it was worth it to get out of the house and not have to deal with the stuff that was going on with my parents. So, school can be one way out. And if you're out of school, look for explore your options for housing, for jobs, all of these things. Network and keep trustworthy friends around you. It can be tough when you've got things like that going on at home, and it can take a long time to get out. But just stick with it. And I know, because I was there at one point, and it feels so good when you can finally get out and be on your own. Or, in my case, what I ended up doing was, my husband and I got an apartment, and because he has a disability, we were able to get it through, his status, and, we just took care of each other. That's why you want to find trustworthy people. You can't I wouldn't recommend doing something like that with just anybody. Make sure that it's somebody that isn't going to leave you high and dry. So those are some things, hopefully, that will help you if you're beginning from incognito. And in a future episode, I'll tell you a little bit more about my own story. But in the meantime, hopefully this will be helpful for your own practice. So for the Kemetic How-To Guide, this is Sharon wishing you Synapti.